As mentioned, today will be more participatory. So please be ready to kind of open up your laptops or phones to write stuff or have questions or insights to share with everyone else. Before we go on, we should thank our sponsors, AWS Malaysia, for this very beautiful event space. Can we give a round of applause? I just see Louis, but thanks a lot, Louis, for your support of the local community. And for this time to provide all kinds of resources to help the ETL community meetup really happen. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Nicholas, who will share our monthly roundup of what's happened in the space in July. Sorry. Please give me a round of applause, guys.
Alright, thank you. Gian and everyone. Finally, someone is right. Okay, so I'm not blocking the slides. Alright, guys, so this is the big news for August. We're gonna check out what's been happening in the crypto space for the month of August. So for this week itself, happening this very week, is the upcoming Goerli merge. So many of you devs have been procrastinating on practicing and running a node. This is your last chance to try it on a testnet before we officially do it for mainnet later on in August. Actually, in August. Alright, sorry. In that. So essentially, it's changed from soon to very, very soon because this is the last testnet we're going to go through, and if everything runs well, there's no major bugs, the merge is finally going to happen. So for end users who are just randomly hold Ether, there's nothing that you need to do specifically. If there's any airdrops or Google Forms that ask you to convert into one to E2, that's definitely a scam. And then if you are a dev, however, we highly encourage you to practice running a node because you can see any issues that might happen when you do this on mainnet. Alright, next. Next thing, just very recently over the last few days, is the Nomad bridge hack. So Nomad is a bridge where you can bridge funds from one chain to another. And recently, during a routine upgrade, analysis has found that essentially they have made it's a little bit complicated, but essentially you are able to repay transactions that happen. So anyone is able to withdraw funds. Anyone, including you and me. So can anyone get any funds from Nomad? I don't think you would say either. So anyway, there is a white hat program. If anyone has helped to get funds from Nomad, you can join the white hat fund recovery process with this link, which we might share with Ron, and you will be able to help them in the recovery process. If I'm not mistaken, Nomad is the third largest hack for a bridge after Goerli, the Exit Infinity Bridge, and also multi-chain. Alright, next. So for the next, I won't brand it as a Solana hack. After recent analysis, we found that the latest news on Twitter seems to be from a wallet called Slope, that's where we got the big news on Twitter that there were a lot of Solana addresses that were compromised. So it apparently came from a wallet called Slope. Are there any Slope wallet users here? Oh, none at all. Okay, good. So essentially, Slope was a wallet that was not handling their private keys, the way they generated their mnemonics very well. So essentially, it led to the leak of private keys, where a lot of people could move funds not only from Solana, but also from any chain that uses mnemonic keys. Most chains that happen. So yeah, it's not a Solana hack, and we do not address it as such, but rather it's related to the Slope wallet. Again, this is where we take the opportunity to shield a hardware wallet, because a hardware wallet is one where the private keys are not revealed to the wallet, and it's not revealed to the internet. So then your funds you have a very low chance when compared to using hot wallets. So then this week also is ZK EVM week, where major projects such as Polygon, ZK and Store have announced their recent updates on major testnet announcements on ZK EVM. So if zero knowledge rollup sounds like a bit of an alien word to you, we should organize a workshop on it. So yeah, we should organize a workshop where we can cover more on blue knowledge stuff. I think there was one actually, a project by Tornado Cash. If anyone attended the one last 2 weeks back. Yeah, by Sichuan. So he did a session on Tornado Cash. And Tornado Cash is an implementation of blue knowledge technology. So this is just the major announcements that most testnets have come up for. Next. And lastly is that DevCon VI is 75. Okay, so it's that reveals my generation age. You cannot be okay. So DevCon 6 is happening in Bogota, Colombia this in October. Is anyone here going to DevCon? Yes, make some noise. Awesome, awesome. So DevCon this year is happening in Colombia, and there is the last round of ticketing for anyone who wants to participate in the biggest student developer event. All the OGs are going to be there, all the biggest projects, the biggest updates on all the latest things for Ethereum happening in Bogota this year. Talk about the volunteer program. Okay, so there is a training fee for attending DevCon. I'm not sure of the fees, but there is also a volunteer program. So if you would like to go there as a student or a scholar, there is a volunteer program. Though it's best if you share this to Telegram because I don't have the links right now. Right. Okay, so in terms of local news, there is a slightly political campaign for the upcoming general election in Malaysia. That I'm not sure how many of you have seen this painting. This is a painting by Tony Hua of the moves that happened with the last government. This wonderful piece of artwork is called Langkah Sheraton, and it is going to be on sale on the Polygon blockchain. There will be 888 copies of this NFT, and you will be able to purchase it on Merdeka, Sarawak Merdeka, for the price of 45 Matic per token. So yeah, I'm interested and supporting this cause. It will, I think the limit is 200 plus per wallet. Yeah. So 45 Matic is $45, 100 thereabout. So yeah, it's about 160 ringgit if you want to get this. Yeah, the exchange rate has not been too good, but you can still join in. Okay, next. Alright, and lastly for another local news, there is the NFT conference happening in KL Tech, very relatively close by here, on the 22nd, 28th August. It's by Minted Asia. If there's anyone from Minted Asia here, you can get you to share some details on it if you would like in the Telegram group. Okay, so we also have some announcement at the end of the roundup, and I'm going to get Harry to go over that. But yeah, that is the news for August, everyone. Thank you.
Alright, so we do have a local testnet community. Unfortunately, both Chichuan and Carlos, who are the main organizers, are currently in Korea for ETSO, but they asked me to share this message to any local developers. So Startnet House is organizing a hackathon to kind of encourage people to use Cairo. Both Chichuan and Carlos are joining, and they're looking for team members who can represent the local community here in Malaysia. So we can participate, and if we win, then, well, if the team wins, then it's a bit more kind of something we can be proud of the local community. So if you're interested, let me know later. We'll also just share the group, the information for you to find out more on Telegram. And the event starts on the 11th of August and it lasts for 5 days. So anyone who's interested, just reach out to me later. Also, we have this nice offer from a group called New Order, not New World Order, and they are organizing a Web3 bootcamp. So for any developers who are not as familiar with Web3, you can sign up to join. There's only about 35 seats, and they've extended this offer sort of exclusively for ETL tonight. So it will be every Saturday for 5 weeks, starting from this Saturday on the 6th of August. Again, I will also share the link to apply in the Telegram group. So reach out to me later or just join our Telegram group and find the link there. Quick note on the DevCon, so the scholarship sort of deadline has passed. So you can apply for a full scholarship to go there. if you want to volunteer at that point, we have a roundtable discussion. So where we can discuss anything and everything about the merge. Some of you have kindly shared some of your thoughts and comments about the upcoming merge, and we've taken note of them, and we will bring them up to be discussed. So please, if you have your laptop, the phones, and you want to like write down notes, you can scan the QR code, and the volunteers will also share a link to the Google Doc in Telegram, so that you can just click on that link as well. And before we start into the more sort of like discussion part, we have a couple of our community members who have kindly done their research and would like to share a bit of context before we start the discussion. So please can we first welcome Asfar.
Thank you, Harry, for the nice introduction. I'm Asfar, and I've definitely done my research. Okay, I guess this is how it will work for today. So I will give some context and history on Ethereum and how Ethereum has gotten to where it is today, and then we will go a little bit more in depth about the merge. And then we will open the floor to roundtable discussion where everyone can ask questions, and then we also be finding out like a shared note, so people can jump in and then people can contribute to the note, so everyone leaving this event has something that they can take home with. Alright, so gearing up for the merge. So I thought this image here tells you a lot actually. But before I go, Rafiq, maybe you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so we tell it where this happy birthday beacon shape. And here's an updated roadmap diagram, so you can actually see what is the roadmap for Ethereum for the merge and beyond. So next. Alright, are you guys ready? You guys ready? Okay. Yeah. So my first impression when I look at this diagram is the next slide. Anyone knows what this means in English? So yeah, so that's like really my reaction. It still is. That's why we have some other committee members who are more well versed in the technical aspect of it. But don't worry, I've done my research. Yeah, next. So I think it's important to know that what is Ethereum's vision? How was it formulated? So everyone knows Bitcoin, the OG of the OG. So when Bitcoin launched, it definitely sparked and created a large group of blockchain developers and researchers all around the world. And you immediately started to see the rise of people leveraging on blockchain technology and this building applications either on top of Bitcoin or building their own blockchains. Some of the more famous ones here are like the Namecoin, similar to like ENS, which is an Ethereum name service, which is a decentralized name registration database, which is its own blockchain. There are colored coins, meta coins that choose to build on top of Bitcoin. But then people quickly realize that there are a lot of potential in blockchain technology that maybe Bitcoin won't be able to do. And at that point in time, most applications will require you to build your own block. And it is quickly very obvious that say that you want to build an app for car sharing, right? I mean, you probably want to focus more on the application side than building your own blockchain for it. So that's where the idea of Ethereum comes, is to create a general purpose blockchain, and you guys can imagine it to be like a big world computer that can do anything. So that's the vision. It's a really, really big vision. And 2016 is block zero. So I should put a link to Etherscan block zero. I can install that. Yeah, so on this timeline here, on the most right is actually James Webb. It is a split image, so hopefully it can last to the end. And yeah, so I put here some milestones for Ethereum and 2016 was one of the biggest thing in Ethereum history was the DAO fork, where an insecure DAO contract really block zero. And what I didn't include here is like a bunch of network upgrades. And network upgrades are like, like it changes the rule of Ethereum protocol, and usually end user won't really realize. But some big network upgrade are highlighted EIP 1559, so it changes the way gas fees are calculated, and those are one of the big changes. And there are a lot of network upgrades that done in preparation for the merge. Yes, thanks. So that's how we get started. So the vision is to become a digital future on a global scale. So grow Ethereum and powerful enough to have all of humanity. So it's such a big, grand vision, right? So you're gonna have to learn along the way. You can have to research along the way. You can have to build along the way. Next slide. And similar to any blockchain out there, not just Ethereum, if there's this security, I forgot what you call it. What you call it? The trilemma, yeah, the trilemma security problem. So it's easy to say, can Ethereum just shut down for like 1 hour and then we upgrade and then we launch it again? Then it's not decentralized that way, right? And you can make a chain fast, but then you might sacrifice on certain things. And one thing that the Ethereum community really strong on is on the decentralization aspect. Like how do you make sure you keep to your vision of decentralization while also achieving scalability and security? Yep. Next. Yeah, the merge. So what's interesting is that the first image you see is one and E2, and if you notice, we stopped using that term. It has been deprecated because it somehow it gives you a false impression when E2 is here, E1 is gone. But actually, it's not. These two happen concurrently. So you see in the second image when the two koala pairs merge, you see that the E1 changes its name to execution layer, and E2 changes its name to consensus layer. So actually, that is what if1 and if2 represent. If1 is the execution layer and if2 is the consensus layer. They separate it, and then what the merge is about is changing the consensus layer of Ethereum. Next. Yeah, so this is some timeline of the merge. Yeah, we'll talk more about it. Currently, we are there. So as you can see, the consensus layer arrow is in green. It's already ongoing. It's already running. So it means that right now the bigger chain is already running, and the execution layer, which is what we are all using now, is also still running. And so Robston, Sepolia, and Goerli are the testnet that will merge slowly before until mainnet is merged completely. Right. Next. Yeah. So you probably won't go into much detail about this, but I did. Okay. So last 3 weeks, what I did try was I tried running an Ethereum node as a non-developer. It was not too easy. So last few weeks when I tried, I had only to install one node client, just run it. But when I tried to participate in the Goerli merge, I actually had to run two node clients. Why? Because now we have two separate execution layer and consensus layer. So I thought this gives some idea about what the merge is about. Because now you have two clients that you have to run to serve two separate purposes. Next. Yeah, just very briefly. So Ethereum itself changes its roadmap and direction many times. Oftentimes reacting to how the community works, seeing how the ecosystem changes, and phase 02 is one of the first roadmap, and then there's a roll-up centric roadmap, and then there's an executable liquidity roadmap, which we can talk more during the roundtable. Next. Yeah, okay, so I think that's all my part. So I will pass the mic to our next committee member who will talk to you more about the merge and what have we observed with the testnet that we merged. Okay. So we invite Philip to speak.
Hello. Right, so if you do not know that the merge is coming, now you know. How many people here have been keeping track on how the merge is progressing and stuff like that? Right, so yeah, at either scan we have to keep track, otherwise you'll see suddenly our Explorer going down halfway through. Right, yeah, that's the next slide. So current state of Ethereum right now, it's using proof of work. You can either call it consensus or anti-cycle. That's a bit of argument right there. It's environmentally costly. The carbon footprint is of the size of Norway, possibly even more right now, lesser, depending on the price. Security is highly subsidized with block emissions. So you are still getting block rewards as you generate new blocks. That's to subsidize the cost of electricity. There's no actual block producer penalties. So if you choose to do something wrong, if you choose to introduce a fork of Ethereum, for example, or you try to roll back transactions and stuff like that, you won't be explicitly penalized. You could choose to still continue your chain and things like that. Hash rate is mercenary, as you can see right now. After Ethereum has announced a merge, as we get closer to it, the hash rate starts moving away from Ethereum to Ethereum Classic or other chains. There's a high barrier to entry as a block producer. So you could set up mining and join a pool. You still wouldn't be a solo block producer, not as much as say, for example, after the merge, if you have 32 ETH, you can already set up a validator and you would get a chance to validate the block. So all these are evidently problems. What's the solution we are proposing? We are proposing to solve all this using the merge. So what is the merge? The merge is basically the merger of current Ethereum. So Ethereum as we know it today is things like gas, you can run gas, you can run Aragon, you can run Nethermine in order to process transactions, in order to include logs and stuff like that. But when it comes to a merge, we'll be including that together with the consensus layer, which is what we call the beacon chain, which has been running since 2020. It's already in production. It would secure the network using another consensus protocol called proof of stake, where you lock up the ETH in order to qualify to be a block producer. Validators are responsible for processing transactions and block inclusion, which used to be miners, so they take on the role of being a miner. And there will be no more block rewards. So if you check out our testnet, you could possibly see cases where, probably not so much on the testnet, but when you start doing it together with the one microfile, you can possibly see deflationary pressure onto the total emission of ETH. No, the merge does not lower transaction fees. There are some misconceptions, so let's get this out of it. It does not lower transaction fees. What it does is basically to swap out the consensus layer on the Ethereum network. To lower transaction fees, there will be a longer running roadmap together with sharding as well as the rock-centric development of Ethereum. Right, so when merge, I can tell you what we have done already. So we have rostered the Korea. Goerli will be done by next week. I think we're getting benefits over the next couple of hours. What benefit does is you start enabling some of the stuff to allow the consensus layer to communicate with the execution layer. Plenty of shadow forks. So what shadow forks are, developers, they would fork off in a controlled environment on their own servers, the Ethereum network or some testnets, then they will try to simulate the merge on that side. So for mainnet, it's on the 10th shadow fork already. Mainnet is full, no dates, but you'll get one soon. Also, read to Robson, Linkable, and Common. These are 3 testnets on Ethereum. They are eventually going to be outpaced soon. So if you are running any projects there, if you have anything wrong running on those networks, you might want to look to migrate into either Sequoia or Goerli. Right. So things to prepare. TTD. Typically, what you will do is you wait for TTD to be announced by the Ethereum network. So what is TTD? It's total terminal difficulty. It's a fancy way of saying difficulty. I will show an example in a bit. So it's the total difficulty of the network. The reason why, so typically when you hear about forks, people will talk about block height. For the merge is different. They will use total terminal difficulty instead. The reason being, they do not want a case where someone could be selfish mining blocks or mining blocks in a certain partition, and after that appearing, suddenly publishing a longer fork, and that becomes a canonical chain. So if you do anything malicious in between, that would be included into the canonical chain. So instead of that, they will use the majority hash power instead. That's the reason for TTD. After you get the TTD, typically developers would already update the clients. If they don't, there will be a flag and override where you can do to override the TTD. Get the updated clients, do that. Ensure both CL and DL they are running. I'll show an example in a bit. wait for Bellatrix. So what happens is you wait for Bellatrix to happen first, and then only the merge starts. Bellatrix exposes all the stuff which allows communication between the two clients, things like execution payload and some extra data. So it enables the engine API in order for both of the clients to communicate to one another. Then once you have the TTD reaching, that's typo. Proof of work will shut down and will ship over to QoS. So yes, you'll need two running layers, one execution layer and one consensus layer, which would look something like this. Before this, you would only see one terminal window running, but right now it's windows. So on one side it's the execution layer, on one side the consensus layer. So they'll be in sync basically. So whenever that additional block or stuff like that, you will reach the consensus layer will tell execution layer what it's number. So you can run it on a single on a single server. You could also possibly run it separately, but the most important thing is there's something called a JWT, which allows the engine API to communicate with one another. That one you need to make sure that it's properly shared between both clients. Okay, next. Okay. So for Etherscan's side, when we work on the merge, what did we notice? We did notice lesser view on testnets, far more predictable block times. Can you open the folder for it? So Goerli is one of the new testnets for Ethereum. You could try syncing this at home. It takes about 2-3 hours depending on laptop specs. This is a really weak laptop. It has probably a power of an MEC. It took about 2 hours to sync. So so if you notice block times, it's extremely regular, except for the part where you see 24 seconds. That's usually a skip slot. A skip slot meaning that the validator wasn't in time to be able to join in and propose a block. But you should see very regular block times in Ethereum currently. You occasionally get like blocks which are more than 15 seconds, or it's a average delay towards 12.5 seconds. But occasionally you see blocks missing out, or sometimes blocks are coming in a lot faster. But in E2 you should see a lot more regular. If you go to slower blockchain, hot blocks, you should see a lot less reorgs happening as well. That's what we noticed at least when we were working on it. Used to be a lot more frequent. So right now it's like one day it happens once or twice. If you scroll back a few pages, that's like 2 pages back. I can see it. It's like happening like. So what happens to reorg is very good. It gets included into the blockchain and gets reverted back because there's a heavier chain which appears. So that's what we call reorg. So your transaction might get included, after that suddenly you see it's not included anymore. And so wait for it to be rebroadcasted and re-included again. What else do we see? Can you go back to the slides? Let's see if there's anything else to notice. These are some of the interesting stuff we have noticed. If you go back to Sequoia, what we have also done is to see on one of the block types, possibly one of the more recent ones. Go to blockchain, go to Q blocks. And you click on one of the more recent blocks. So you can see there's an additional type of consensus info on the block. So these are all the E2 stuff with regards to consensus layer. So that which slot is included, which default is not. Typically you wouldn't need to know too much of it, but it's included for validity's sake. That's it. Play around, look around, try to sync up the Sequoia network. If you have any questions, you can ask in the group. I'll be there to help. Shouldn't take more than a couple hours just tinkering around. Okay, can we go back to the PowerPoint slide? so after the merge, so right now everyone is focused on the merge, trying to get things up and running because it's very much like changing an engine and playboy is still there. So after the merge, we'll get a slew of really nice things. Right now, deposits are being locked. You wouldn't be able to withdraw them. So post-merge, we were expecting one of the upgrades, I think was Shanghai. Yeah, one of the updates. They will start pushing in updates so that you can withdraw. Withdrawals are rate limited for security reasons. No one has updates. That's the portion on the merge. The search scalability, the search addresses mainly scalability. Core data expansion for rollups. Since right now, the idea is that since that there are a lot of people building on rollups, so since like the community agrees that's the direction we should go to. So what we would do is improve usage of core data by decreasing costs, increasing the limits you can use it, stuff like that. Shards data will be centered in. This one will go towards the things like time sharding, more towards the native sort of inbuilt stuff, which allows for more capacity on Ethereum itself instead of the rollups on top of Ethereum. I wish the verge is more towards on the data structure side. So improved data structure will allow you for better ways of running clients. You can run stateless clients, makes it easier for people to run like clients by themselves. You could potentially run a node on your mobile phone, things like that. The purge, so the expectation is that Ethereum eventually will reach a point where the blockchain itself is not expected to store all information for the end user. People who need historical information can still get it, but then again, not everyone is expected to need to have that entire 3 or terabytes of archive data. If you're running just a full load, then it's like 300, 400 GB. So eventually there will be things to expire off the history. The chain data will improve. EVM simplification makes it easier, more intuitive to use EVM, to removing self-destruct, which seems to be causing more problems. The splurge is everything extra, which the nice stuff which you can get, things like account extraction. So what account extraction allows you to do is like you can get someone else to pay for gas on behalf of you and things like that. Basically, your account becomes very much like a smart contract. Proposal builder separation. This one is more towards ensuring fairness when it comes to block proposals and keeping both the block producers and the proposers separate. Yep, next. Links. This will be shared with you guys later. You can read it out if you like. This goes more in depth into the design of some of the things which I've discovered earlier. Next. And yeah, this is the full graphic. So post-merge, what we get the merge to work with post-merge withdrawals, the surge, making the blockchain easier to run, the verge, data structure improvements, stateless clients, the purge, basically removing old data, making the EVM simpler to run, the splurge, so all the nice extra things which we can get. So that's pretty much it. I think this is the last slide. Don't try to run a node. It's actually quite interesting.
All right. Thank you, Caleb. Alright, so now we are going to start our roundtable. So we have a few questions submitted by the community. And as we mentioned before the start of the event, we do want to make this participatory. So there's no dumb questions. There's no questions that are too hard either. So if you are speaking, please mention your name and then you can mention your questions, and then you can also share your thoughts. It doesn't have to be just questions. So I guess I'll start with the first question. Okay. What does it mean for regular users? So if the person that started this question is here, and you guys want to raise your hand, alright. So what does it mean for regular users? Does anyone want to answer this question? Alright, I'll start. I can't stand too close to us. Yeah, I'll just stand over here. Like Caleb said, doesn't actually matter to regular users too much. It hasn't actually
doesn't actually help scalability. You can use essentially the execution layer, which for the most part everyone uses, which is the Ethereum that we know today. Only if you are a validator, you would sort of be concerned about the consistency to run. What as regulators we want to kind of observe, want to make sure is that the validators are sort of decentralized enough. So if you look at, I think Etherscan shared a pie chart just the other day. There are 4 entities that make up more than 50% of validators. If you look at a very sort of superficial side, but the largest one, Lido, actually is made up of 29 validators. So that's actually 32 different entities who hold 50% of the deposits. So there is a kind of like a watchman thing where we want to make sure that the validators are sufficiently decentralized. Otherwise, we may run into problems later.
And for me, what it means for me is I don't want to see whether will I notice the transition, right? So it say that if I'm having some degen work or I'm using some NFT, then suddenly like they change pause for a while. And that is something that the Ethereum core developers are really focusing their head on. How do you make sure that this transition happens simultaneously, instantaneously? Yes, do you want to answer it?
Yeah, and if you are a node operator, for example, if you run a node for some reason, for example, if you are an exchange, you might want to test out the merge. Okay, so the thing is, because the beacon chain takes a bit of time to sync as well, so you don't really want to do it last minute, even though if you have full access to your servers and everything can run everything locally, you don't really want to do it last minute. So probably the beacon chain will take a couple days to sync. The execution layer would still be syncing like if it's QoS, and after that it will start dropping off. So yeah, that's what.
Thank you. Can you state your name as well?
It's up to you. I like to use the Ethereum because it's 2 hours to save, only for me a lot more.
For those who couldn't hear or on live stream, Caleb just said you can use both, but Sequoia takes 2 hours, whereas Goerli takes 4.
Caleb, so I have a question for you, right? So what if Infura forgot, or like they forget about the merge, right? So what would happen to users using MetaMask on Infura's account? Sorry, putting you on the spot.
You won't be able to send transactions. You won't be able to sync with the blockchain in the first place. So you'll be basically blind to anything which is happening on Ethereum.
There you go. All right. Okay. Before I go to the next question, is there any question from the floor? All right. So next is really low gas fee. So yeah, the short answer is no. And I put a note here because Ethereum Foundation website is pretty helpful, right? So why no, right? So because the merge is a change of the consensus system. It's not about the expansion of the network. The expansion of the network comes after the merge. And I have been guilty of this thought a few months back. I thought that gas fee will be low, but no. So imagine if you are in a flight, right, and then you're on the way to your destination, and then the engine is swapped suddenly. Yeah, so that has been the analogy lah. So what they are trying to do is that to make sure that you don't realize that the jet engine is being swapped. So yeah, so it did not change the size of the airplane, it just changed the engine. So that in the future it can increase the size or whatever. Alright, any question on gas fees? Alright, okay. So yeah, next question, will it reduce energy consumption? Okay, so just a show of hands, if anyone okay. So who here think that it's important for blockchain technology to also keep in mind about the environment? Hey, you raise your hand. Yeah, so it's very important. So I actually sent a link to the Telegram group. So it shows an illustration of how much energy Ethereum will use post merge. Telegram group. But proof of work uses a lot of energy, right? Because you need to run miners and you need to run electricity. It's on. Yeah. So here the block says Ethereum energy usage will still decrease by 99%. So you can scroll down. There's like a chart. and then I think there's a much nicer chart. So yeah, can you zoom out a bit? CPIL, or the top right, the three dots next to your picture. Yeah, the zoom. You can minimize. Yeah. So these are illustration of how much our energy usage for Ethereum will be after the merge. Yes, some illustrations. So currently Bitcoin uses a lot of energy. And currently Ethereum proof of work are using a leaning tower of Pisa amount of energy, and then app was merged. By comparison, it will just be like a screw. So that's nice, right? And my point of view of this is on how like blockchains are being a danger to the world, right? I do feel like the fact that you can say that and the fact that you can measure is at least a good first start. Like, how can you even talk about how much energy that we use for a computer, how much energy that we use during our cars? You can't even measure that. But at least with blockchain, you can measure, and if you want to change something, you must start by first being able to measure it. All right. Any questions on the energy side of things? Proof of stake?
I just want to say then finally Ethereum can join the clean NFT movement.
Yes, that's true, that's true, that's true. Right, can we go to the next question? Okay. Alright, will the merge cause a centralization issue with institutional speakers? I think Harith mentioned this. Yeah, but then I do have a question, right? So, if it is a centralization issue, should independent speakers collude and demand something else, or should they create like a bigger staking group? Like, how do you think that it will be? Well, ask me. Yeah, ask you.
Okay, so just full disclosure, not expert. We're all learning here. One thing with the Ethereum sort of consensus mechanism design is that even if in a situation where sort of the majority of the validators are compromised, are not acting in the best interests of the community, there is kind of these penalty mechanisms that have been added. There's like inactivity, but in this case, it will be more slashing. So the committee can actually come to social consensus to say that this, say, group of validators are not acting in our best interests. So we will go and port to a completely different chain where that, let's say, 60% of the validators deposits are slashed. So that means it's like completely burnt from them, and then they will run with the remaining 40% of validators. So it's like a nuclear kind of weapon where we run with sort of blockchain and consensus mechanisms, but in the sort of extremely bad disaster event that something happens, the community has an option to go and run a different chain and fork out all those sort of hostile validators.
This question.
So expanding on this question of that, basically, I think it has to do something with the incentives for validators to run a infrastructure to maintain the system. And since that, since they're not going to be block rewarded traditionally, but if I correct myself with this, oh, okay. Then what am I going to say first?
Right, I realized I said omission of block rewards. Actually, it's on the CL side. On the CL side, you still get some stuff. It's skewed towards the computational power which you need, so it's fairly low right now. But you still can make like passive income. I think it's 6%, 7% ish. But if you want, yeah. But on the EL side, you will not be getting any more block rewards. There will be like 2 block rewards for block inclusion, 1.75 for inclusion, stuff like that.
So yeah, that's the part that I'm a little bit confused. Considering that you still have to run both on you have to run both the EL side and the CL side as well. So let's just imagine a scenario where you can have a group of collaborators. They would pretty much create anonymous accounts, buy as many investment pies, let's say. Each of these investment pies is stake essentially each of them. And they can put it out as like 1,000 back of some higher ups. So in that case itself, would that also be creating the similar kind of issue, just like what currently we have for legal overtaking about 3% of the network in a similar manner, like having a lot of people in the pool, and in that sense, social like potential.
So first of all, in the example of Lighters, actually, like I said, it's 29 different entities who are running different node operators. But in the case where you run like thousands of nodes, right, and it's all just one entity, even though it's 1,000 different Raspberry Pis. So as mentioned, in the sort of disaster event that some hostile party manages to get more than X% of the validator power and try to sort of censor transactions or try to sort of screw around with the blockchain in some way, then the community can fork out these validators. They can literally say this 60% is can be proven is acting not in the best interest, censoring or manipulating things somehow. So we will create a different chain with the 40% validators, and in this alternate reality with this chain, those 60% their deposits are gone. So if you get to do that, and all these different DeFi apps, all these different stable fund providers, they can agree to that, then the people who run this 60% have all of their deposits gone. So you face that risk. You want to try and manipulate the blockchain at the risk of losing all of your capital. And the point of it is not so much that it would probably be done, kind of similar to the idea of a nuclear sort of threat, right? You don't want to do it, but the fact that it exists, the fact that it's there, the idea is that it is a disincentive for someone to even want to try and do it.
So essentially, this will be regulated by the DAOs.
There's no regulation, so Ethereum doesn't have any one-chain voting. It's rough social consensus is how Ethereum has always done things, including the DAO that happened, the DAO fork happened in 2016. So that's the goal. There is no clear sort of description of how the community would act, but there is this gadget, there is this nuclear bomb that we can launch if something happens.
Thank you very much. So to add on to that, I also can expand on a few things. Things like the type of maliciousness, the malicious acts which you'll be doing. Things like if you try to fork off the chain so if you try to fork off the chain, you get slashed. Because the thing with QoS is that your liveness can be an issue if validators decide that they want to go offline. That's another form of malicious act as well. So that's the thing with inactivity leaks. So if you don't propose blocks, you eventually get slashed until your deposit goes to a certain threshold and get kicked out. There are stuff like that, penalties built into the system itself, which is not it's not present in your W, for example. So that's the way the network will be able to safeguard itself, alongside with all the other social consensus which you can work on. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Thank you, Goerli.
How big is it? I mean, that's an interesting point, right? So if, let's say you have a license detection on the network, and you feel like, okay, this bunch of nodes are not really performing, these block users are not really performing, and you want to slash out the deposit. But what if they were actually having a backup? Right? We just had phase one recently, right? And then just imagine you're running one, and you just cannot see there's no electricity. And the network believes that, hey, these guys are not actually really live right now, and they're not performing, they're not good participants in the network. And if you start slashing, what about that?
I think before clear answer can address just now where inactivity leak is not slashing necessarily. It is just like a slight sort of you don't get your expected output versus profit and a slight drop in your deposit. So it's very minor. So unless you are offline for like I don't know what the time that has been estimated, but it's significantly long time. You will not have your deposits leak enough for you to be kicked out of the system. So you might use up to let's say 0.5 P, but you can go back home and turn back your electricity, turn back your nodes, and then you will be able to recover and continue with just maybe 0.5 less.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers is for solo staker, the number is in the order of a couple of weeks. You get a couple of weeks to recover. And also in terms of blackout, is like for example, say for example, if AWS blackout. Yeah. So what happens is, depending on how much of the network goes down, the inactivity would scale as well. So if a large portion of the network goes down, then it will accelerate. If a smaller portion, say a solo validator, you get a couple of weeks. I think I think it gets more than a couple of weeks, I mean, in order to restore your network. It's actually not that bad. I've seen people just like they went on vacation 1 week in Mac and restored this. They're still able to make profit. So should be alright.
Right. But yeah, so for those people who say that proof of stake in Ethereum space is like easy, anyone can do it, and the rich get richer and stuff, it's not true. So as you can see, there's risk involved. If you don't run your nodes in a very sort of, you don't take care of your nodes, then you might lose Ether and like get kicked out. So yeah, it's not risk free when it comes to stake.
Maybe I'll just throw it out there also. The difference between slashing and inactivity. When you get slashed, you get kicked out of the network at the same time. Inactivity means you are just waked out gradually until you reach the threshold, and only then you get kicked out. So it's very specific sort of penalties depending on what you do to the network.
Alright, thank you guys. Yeah. Very good conversation there around centralization and blockchain risk. Yeah, so next question that we have is what will happen to miners after the merge? Essentially, miners will be obsolete, right? So miners' role will be replaced by validators. So instead of miners producing blocks, it will be validators. Instead of miners building the block, so now it will be validators proposing the block. Yes, right.
I just want to say there's a question number 9 there about how hardcore. So that's probably something that a miner might try.
Yep. So I have a question. I mean, we can jump to that on the app.
I have a question on this.
Yeah.
So any idea what will happen with eHash, right? Because the whole purpose of it is, like we have the hashing algorithm is because we wanted to be SIM resistant, right? And currently it's going to be blocking on the servers if we just go with it with the web again. Any idea what's going to be with? Are we still going to be going with eHash for E 2.0 or will it be replaced? Do you know that?
They won't be going on. I know there's one version. I know there's one version which Christy recommended. I think that may not go in as well in the end. Yeah, they will not be using the Hashimoto stuff anymore. Yeah, they just swap it out the entire thing for fuel.
Okay, so they will go for a simpler version, I guess, more kind of a SHA module.
It's not even using SHA anymore. It's basically a rundown of selection of validators, and after that, validators will be given the chance to propose their blocks. There will not be any competition per se, but it's a random selection of committees.
Okay, so in this case, the random is more leader-based consensus. So in this case, it's
For the
why
hackathon, yes.
now is it around moving?
Yeah, it's sort of like the setup. So you get, per epoch, you get 6.4 minutes in order to propose the blocks. When it's your turn, then you have to propose it. Other people will attest to that and stuff like that.
It's more like PBFT. So in this case, like PBFT, you have a time, everybody's been allocated a random time. And in this case, we have to propose it in that time.
Yes, it's something similar of the structure.
Alright. Okay, so going back to the Ethereum proof of work, so it will be interesting to see that if a big group of miners decide to not proceed with the merge, right? Will there be two concurrent Ethereum chains running, one on POS and one on proof of work?
I think I can take this. So because there will be a hard fork when the merge happens, then there will be a different chain. Node operators are recommended to switch because that's where the community will switch the majority. There might be people who choose to run the old or concurrent fork, but when it comes to Ethereum, it has been the case since the beginning of Ethereum. this Ice Age difficulty bomb. So inside the code of every node running every Ethereum client is this sort of difficulty bomb. After a certain number of blocks, the difficulty for you to mine any new Ethereum block on this current chain will be exponentially more difficult. So even if you remain on this same current fork, it will be impossible for you to be able to mine future blocks. So for those who want to create a alternative proof of work to Ethereum, they would also have to create a different fork where they remove that line of code that has that ITH difficulty fork. So miners can try, anyone can try. If you have sufficient kind of support from a substantial amount of the community, then there would be an alternate chain. Personally, I would take that 3 Ether and sell it where I can, but it's up to everyone.
And I think this is where the total terminal difficulty plays a part, right? Because it makes it hard for miners to know exactly when the merge will happen.
Yes, yes. And I would like to say Ethereum Classic needs the hash rate, so you can get it.
Yeah. So mine ETC instead of buying a new fork.
Alright. So Philip, so you mentioned total difficulty, right? TDD. Is there a reason why the committee doesn't choose a block number for the merge to happen? Why must you choose the TDD?
That's because with block number, you could sort of like mine blocks on a separate partition, and after that suddenly publish your blocks. That chain becomes canonical because the different chain reads it at the particular block height. So you could be a minority, fork of the Ethereum network. So that's the main reason. Generally, it's easier to keep a fork number than to manipulate the difficulty of the network. If you could manipulate the difficulty of the network, pretty much you do already have majority hash rate. So that's pretty much a 51% attack rate. So it's pretty much having the control over the network anyway. So that's the reason why we went with TTD.
I think it's both like the case of confirming that you have the majority with you, and then because if let's say you go with it, you're basically forking out. There's a possibility of forking out at the beginning itself, right? Because in this case, there might be a different block that has been mined on a different difficulty in a different year, which haven't reached full on confirmation, like a full block confirmation yet, right? So in this case, there's a possibility of it forking based on the block number itself. Because some, let's say in Latam, they're thinking that this is the new blockchain, and this is how ETH merge started, right? And in KL, it can be a different block with a different data, same block number, but it's already forked out, right? Then it'll be hard to see that. So in this case, it's more kind of to avoid that issue. So you can actually have confirmation that you have the highest number of block difficulty and the TTD. And in this case, you can move on with an upgrade, right? But I was just about to come to one question over there. Because when you say reorg, right, are we still getting block confirmation after the merge? Number two, how do we be certain that there's a finality, right? Because when you talk about reorg, what if, let's say, I write a smart contract, and basically I'm querying the chain and say that if this, what do you call the transaction go through, but then there's a reorg after it. Is there a finality proof that is being given in the new offer?
Okay, Caleb, maybe just a minute for that, because you want to make sure that we have time for the node workshop. But you want to answer, no? Okay.
There's no workshop because it takes 2 hours to sing and one. So for QoS, yes, there's finality. You cannot say it's 2 epochs. So you can see when an epoch is being finalized, you will not be able to roll back. If you want to roll back, you get slash. Not finalized, you get slash. Also, for each block which has been published onto the blockchain, there will be attestation, backward attestation. So validators would backwards attest that this block is considered canonical. So the weight starts adding on as well. So that is sort of like a weightage as well to each block which is being included.
There's a really good Twitter thread by Sriram Kannan, who is a professor at an American university, focused on consensus mechanisms. So that's describing how the Ethereum consensus mechanism works after the merge. So it's got both sort of the Nakamoto consensus, or what we typically call proof of work, side to it. That will be the first two epochs. And then after two epochs, which is 64 blocks, then there is a friendly finality gadget, which is what's introduced by the Ethereum researchers. At that point, it becomes final. So within the first 64 blocks, after one block is produced, it is using something similar to what currently is being used, similar to this. It's called Ghost Greedy Heaviest Observed Subtree. But basically, it's the proof of work that is being used. And after the two epochs is final, then as Caleb said, if you try and mess around with it, you get slashed.
Alright, so I want to go to question number 6. Rafiq, can you scroll up and you zoom a little bit to question number 6? So hopefully it's a little bit more open-ended question. I think not 6, but now it's different here. It's about what will happen to L2 and the ETH ecosystem. Yeah, number 8. Yeah, so anyone here uses Polygon? Okay, alright. So there are a lot of people are saying that layer 2s will eat market share from Ethereum. So does anyone want to share their thoughts on layer 2? Will they eat on Ethereum marketplace? Market share, or will it support Ethereum marketplace? CZ here says that L2 will always be a factor faster and more economical than L1. For me, generally, if I want to bring my friends who are new in crypto, I would definitely bring them to L2 first. Yeah.
So I'd like to share just one point of view, okay, which I think makes a lot of sense, right? The way that I see how all these layer 2s work is that they are building their own ecosystem. They have their own DeFi apps. So how I like to see the multi-chain future is basically Ethereum is the big city, right? It's Kuala Lumpur. Everything is expensive, always traffic jam, right? And then came along Polygon, right? Okay, which is basically Seremban. Okay, food there is cheaper, right? Okay, you do your business there and all that. You have your own ecosystem, you have your banks and all that, right? You have your Ethereum has Uniswap. Okay, Polygon has QuickSwap. So when you have these like smaller little cities or towns that build around, does that mean okay just because Ethereum upgrade to KL 2.0, does that mean okay that Seremban no longer relevant? No, it doesn't. It continues to thrive as long as the ecosystem is being built there. So that's my logic, okay, behind okay why even if continues to become the Papa city, right? L2s will still remain to be relevant.
I remember seeing on Twitter this thing that in the future only layer 2s will use Ethereum. Do you believe that?
I think okay that Ethereum has the head start, and anything okay should not rest on its laurels. I mean like Ethereum is the one okay that has undeniably the longest established history next to Bitcoin, right? That cannot be underestimated. Nobody can replicate that. Nobody can fork that, right? So it has the head start.
Just comment back on what so, I mean, there's something called, just going back on the analogy, right? So basically, you have Seremban, you have KL. There's a concept called Ethereum shared security, right? So you have like different L2s, right, who actually then come back and use that Ethereum as the security layer or the consenting layer, right? But then there's also bogus L2s, like they claim to be L2, but they actually have L1, their own as well. But in this case, what happens is that each of them are currently optimizing for different areas, right? Some are getting really good in games, some are getting really good in like the DeFi applications, right? So they kind of like building their own ecosystems, just like Jason said, you have Stromba, you have like different cities around KL, like Cyberjaya, they might have their own opportunities to grow, to attract the ecosystem, but in the end, they bring back everybody back to the shared security concept, right? I think that is something that is valuable that the L2s are providing, but now with sharding is introduced and transaction speed increase, that's where the value proposition of L2 will now have to change. What are you? Are you trying to just be a faster Ethereum or trying to bring back value to the Ethereum ecosystem overall? Right? I think that's the question that we've been, the mindset that we've been have. Oh, let's go use Polygon, it's faster. Right? I think the question will change. Is it really faster now? That's the reason we're using it? Or is it because it has like all these different functionalities, features, security, optimization, that you want to utilize on Polygon. Yeah, that's nice.
Okay, just to clarify a little bit, I think a couple people mentioned. So Polygon, the current Polygon POS chain that is being used is typically described as a layer 2. Typically layer 2, as Happy mentioned, has a shared security with Ethereum. So therefore, the typical examples are optimistic rollups and zero knowledge rollups, such as Arbitrum, Optimism, and the 3ZK EVM examples that Nicholas kindly shared. So these are where you take the activity that has been happening on that chain, you kind of compress it into a proof, and that proof you pass on to the Ethereum layer 1, and anyone can verify that proof. So therefore, you rely on Ethereum for security, whereas other chains can rely on themselves for security. So that's one kind of like advantage as the merge has happened, and Ethereum kind of unlocks the door to be able to add more upgrades later, such as call data expansion that Taylor mentioned. Then that gives more room for rollups to put their sort of data on Ethereum. We've seen that, for example, Arbitrum, anyone who participated in the Arbitrum Odyssey a couple months back, you might have noticed that the cost of the transaction actually was more expensive than Ethereum layer 1. So there's many different reasons, but one reason is as Ethereum continues its upgrades after the merge, it would be able to sort of fit in more of this data, so it will be cheaper for you to make transactions on Arbitrum.
Right, and Jason also mentioned something about multi-chain, right? And one thing that I noticed, there are also certain chains that are specifically targeting certain part of blockchain. The one on top of my head is Celestia, which focuses just on data availability. So I thought that is interesting. What did I get wrong? No? Right, okay, that's right. And I don't want to transition to like a more technical question. At the end about data availability sampling and how does it help scalability. But yeah, Harry, you can and tell the audience what is data availability and why it's important.
Sure. Yeah. So as mentioned, like as Phil mentioned, you when you run nodes, the nodes are going to get big. So what you want to have in an ideal blockchain is that anyone can run what's called a light client, right? So like you use your phone, and your phone can verify that transactions are being done correctly. So one problem with that is that light clients are trusting some other party, right? Like you are only checking that certain layer of the data. Beyond that, you are trusting someone else. So with data availability sampling, what you do is, without getting too technical, I guess, there is this thing called erasure coding, which is a similar technology that's used on your CDs, so that a bunch of the data is kind of like redundant. So you don't need 100% of the data, you need only a certain percentage of the data to verify that something is being done right. So with data availability sampling, which is not yet there, which is, as I mentioned, Celestia, which is a different blockchain that wants to focus on just data availability sampling. If and when that is done, then when you run a phone, a light client on your phone, then you can verify little bits of the data that's on the blockchain. And the more nodes there are like yourself, the more people who are running these light clients, it actually improves the scalability of the blockchain. It actually makes it faster. So it kind of like reverses this whole scalability trilemma that Aspa mentioned earlier, where like in this case, the more light clients there are, the better or the more efficient the blockchain becomes. But I think that's a very technical part that we'll probably want to discuss separately just for example.
Okay. Okay, so we actually have a few newer questions submitted from our viewers and members. I don't want to take a list. Why are older testnets being deprecated? I want to take a guess because it's hard to maintain. So what is the rationale of deprecating testnets?
Because nobody wants to support her, actually not so much that. Yeah, it's just because it's getting harder to coordinate upgrades and stuff like that for testnets. So they are looking to consolidate and rein in basically the number of testnets they are. So going forward we'll be having Goerli and supporting instead of 4 or 5%. Yeah. Also, it allows them to, because right now, for example, right now they are running the merge, so they have the intention of already not supporting these testnets, which allows them to move forward with upgrades which potentially could even break the testnet. So they don't need to have the mental burden of, yeah, this we need to make sure the longevity of this testnet, and therefore we cannot push out upgrades which eventually needs to go on mainnet, which we have to make sure that the testnet still continues running. So it allows them to move faster and break things. So yeah, that's the question.
Alright. Caleb, do you have anything? No? Alright. Yeah, so yeah, let's go down the question. So there is an interesting question here. Can you go up a little bit? Okay. What happens to tokens being staked in protocols or existing NFTs on ETH or other derivatives? So nothing happens to it. So as we mentioned earlier during the session, is that the goal is really to make the switch as instantaneous and simultaneous. So for us, or for any end users who are using certain dApps, you shouldn't notice any change. So if you have NFTs on Optimism, Arbitrum, or mainnet, or if you are staking on some farms, you shouldn't be noticing any difference, because what it does for the merge is it only changes the consensus layer, so it should not affect anything whatever that you are doing now. Right. Go ahead. Okay. Alright. So let's go to another question. Which question that hasn't been answered? Or do we have any questions on the floor? Right. What happens to ETH issuance? I do not remember this.
Yeah. So ETH issuance, since the beginning of Ethereum, the sort of block rewards have been decreased over time. I think originally it was about 5 Ether per block, then they became 3 and 2. After merge happens, that 2 block reward, as Caleb mentioned earlier, when you are mining a new block, that 2 block reward gets removed, and the amount of Ether that is rewarded for you proposing or producing a new block on the consensus layer is it's not static. It changes with the amount of validators that are running their validators. I think we can find it and share in the Telegram group. I think there is the website that was run by Anthony Sassano and Eric Connor. I forget his name, but they had a very good article including charts to explain how that percentage changes with more validators and with less. But generally, it would just be sort of like higher at a lower rate the more validators there are. So that's on the issuance, and separately there is the EIP 1559, which was done last year. For those who are not familiar, this is a pretty cool innovation done in the blockchain space, where block sizes are not static anymore. Previously for Ethereum, it would be 15 million gas. Doesn't really matter, but just imagine like 15 units, and it was always static. But with 1559, the sort of block gets bigger or smaller in size depending on the amount of traffic that there are. So if you imagine the typical highway, when there's like more traffic, suddenly magically there's like 6 new lanes in the highway, and then it gets like smaller where there's less, and then that affects issuance as well.
Right. Thanks, Arif. So we have a few minutes left for the roundtable. So let's just go through some of the questions. Okay, so I'm interested at the fourth question from the end. It says, no, the third. So far, I've only read good news on Twitter leading up to the merge. What are some of the major blockers devs are looking at? So yeah, I was watching some videos and podcasts where they are interviewing Peko, who is the coordinator for Ethereum core developers, and their main concern is that people do need to test and get used to how to run nodes before the merge. Right? So that's why you have the testnets merging before mainnet, and I think the main I don't know what the main thing, but I think one of the blockers that the devs are thinking of is how do you make sure that everyone is prepared for the merge? Right? Is everyone rehearsed? So it's like a dress rehearsal. You can't just plan a play and then they show up. Right? So you need your important players to test to just so that when the time comes, everyone knows their role, everyone knows their part, because this is like a big change, right? So you want to make sure that everyone knows what they need to do and provide places for you to test and prepare for the merge. Are you aware of any other major topics for the looking at?
I think blockers not so much, maybe strange network activities, but even then also like 7 block beyond and stuff like that. But those, yeah, people have already studied it and see what happened. I mean, the thing is with the merge POS is actually not something new. They have been conceptualizing it since 2014. The beacon chain had been around since 2030. Technically, POS has been running since 2030. It's not just merged back into the execution layer. So, yeah, there's a lot of preparing, a lot of coordination which happens. And that's most of the reason why you hear mostly good things. There's a lot of preparations. It's like I mentioned earlier, changing the engine of an app in there. So people are in general extremely cautious in how they want to take this on, and there's a lot of discussions where even ourselves in the scan we have joined in and give some feedback, mention what would we do. There's a lot of ping pong and stuff like that. So I guess that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of good stuff instead of really bad stuff happening. It's just a lot of coordination, a lot of pre-planning and thinking. So it's nothing new. Like I've been running around for a couple of years.
Yeah, but changing engines with error is no matter how much preparation you do, there's always something that can go off. One minor screw that isn't being put in properly. So don't necessarily just buy into the hype. Take note that things can go wrong and have gone wrong before. So yeah, just cautiously optimistic might be the best position to have.
Right, thank you. So last question before we end our table is the merge price in. So yeah, price is price, and I think what's most important is we keep building, and this is what the community is about. So yeah, thank you everyone for the round table. Thank you, Caleb. Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thanks everyone. So thanks Asma for organizing. Please give him a round of applause. Yeah. As mentioned earlier, it's a little bit more chaotic than what we did last time. So if you have any feedback at all on how to improve, how it might be easier for you to participate or interact with the conversation, please feel free to share your feedback. Rafiq will be sharing the QR code, and we'll also share the link inside the Telegram group. So yeah, just scan the QR code, leave any feedback that you have. There's no right or wrong answers. You can leave your name if you want, or you can leave it quiet if you want to be secretive and a mystery. But yeah, please share any and all feedback that you might have so that we can make for a better meetup next time and continuously improve. Our goal, as we mentioned, is we want to learn, create an environment for people to learn and share so that the Malaysian community can become much stronger in the space and can be something that we can be proud of. So with that in mind, everyone, please give yourselves another round of applause. And do we still have pizza? No? Okay. We have one slice. So the first person to get there can front run everyone else and grab that slice of pizza. Otherwise, just feel free to sort of chit chat and network with everyone. There's no wrong and right questions. So yeah, if anyone is interested to participate in the hackathon or the bootcamp that was mentioned earlier, please feel free to reach out to me right after this. And otherwise, yeah, we'll see you again next month. Thanks, everyone.